Welcome to Politics Done Right on KPFT. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Give me a call at 713-526-5738. That is 7.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Williams, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. You know, it's covering a whole lot of stuff. Yes, what can I say? Somehow I can't hear myself. But you know what, folks? That doesn't matter because we are going to have a great time. Guess who is in the studio with us? Lupita. Lupita, ¿cómo estás? Lupita is now the engineer taking care of stuff. But she just walked out. So where is Lupita? But you know who else I have in the studio with me? Guess who else I have in the studio with me? El Señor Daniel Cohen. Daniel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I am better than I deserve. How are you?
What do you mean you're better than you deserve? What do you mean that you are better than you deserve?
I am a fortunate and lucky person, Egberto Willies.
Yeah, well, you know what? I tell you what. I know you're fortunate and lucky. We are here to discuss some great stuff today, but I'm going to tell you something. We're not going to hit it immediately. We are going to kind of have a quick banter unless you have to, like, run away. Do we have you, man?
Let's talk. Let's do this.
Hey, but before I want to speak to our new engineer, Lupita, how are you doing today?
Estoy bien, ¿y tú?
Estoy luchando con la vida como siempre, pero you know what? Your voice is going to bring us new listeners. You know that? Because the last time you did El Señor Juan's show, those phones were lighting up.
Oh, I'm flattered.
You don't have to be flattered. It's just the truth. You know what I mean? It is just the truth. But we're going to have a great show for you guys today, folks. The title of the show today is The Will of the People Must Prevail, Absent Rights and Environmental reasons. And Daniel, can you tell me why I'm saying that? Why am I saying? Why am I including that stuff about rights and environmental stuff?
Because there were black plumes in the sky, and there was today, and there was in the future.
You had to bring that up, right?
That's right, the ITC disaster.
Yeah, but you know what else too? I wanted to remind folks that hey, we believe in freedom and all that good stuff, but we also believe that you can't have mob rule and all that good stuff. But you know what? It doesn't matter. Let's start with the show. The will of the people must prevail absent rights or environmental violations. And subtitle, Americans are good people with a representation that too many times forget it is the will of the people that matters as long as they do not violate personal or environmental rights. Represent and then watch a country flourish. Represent and then watch a country flourish. That is what I love about 2018, brother. 2018, we represented. 2018, you guys went out there and busted butt. And 2018, we showed what can be done, didn't we?
We did. You went out there and busted butts just like everybody else.
Yeah, but, you know.
Members of the free and independent press.
There we go, brother. There we go. But, folks, look here. Why is America in such poor state? Do Americans even know how bad it is, or is everyone so personalizing their condition that they are incapable of believing that they are not alone? Remember, I always talk about, folks, Americans are great at suffering in silence. Americans are great at suffering in silence. We have to get beyond that and realize that we are all suffering together. And when we do that, we can really get that mass together. Anyhow, continuing. For some time, we have been pointing out that thing most Americans want line up with our progressive values. Most Americans like what progressives are offering, or after all, it's what they want. Too many of our political representatives continue to seek a mythical middle they claim is the residence of most Americans. That is false. You see, for many politicians, it is trendy to create a reality many times for purposes where the interests of most of us are immaterial. After the blog of the week, we will go over a Harris County, Texas story where we will find out if we will have politicians, our county commissioners court, listen to the constituency. We will give the case national exposure in either case for several reasons. The first is to illustrate how a few people can lead successful movements like we had in 2018 right here in Harris County. Harris County owes so much to the activation of people by many, including yours, our good friend here, Daniel Cohen. Most importantly, we will examine the political process and how to empower through continual engagement, always with the eye of electing those who promise to execute what? The will of the people. But before we get busy, before we get to the program, I want to remind all our listeners that KPFT is a bastion of intelligent voices and programs. As a political activist myself, my favorites are, and guess what I'm doing today? We have a new voice coming in. Think Wing Radio with
Mike Koenig.
On
Mondays at 3.
And then we have Open Journal with
Dwayne Bradley and the crew, Mondays at 6.
And we have Jazz Latino, Afro-Cuban Latin Jazz at its very best, hosted by
Juan Flores on Tuesdays at 12 noon, which I am also a part of.
And you know what? When I heard her voice on Juan Flores, I said, man, we have to get her talking because she's bringing those numbers up for Juan Flores, and she's going to do the same for Politics Done Right. But anyhow, we also have Gener Asian Radio, a weekly radio program featuring an eclectic mix of Asian, underground, Bhangra, Bollywood, funk, Hindi, Rai, where ancient sounds meet future beats. And when is that again?
Tuesdays from 4 to 6 p.m.
And our good our former engineer is that guy who, well, you don't spin records anymore. I'm showing my age. I'm glad I'm hanging around millennials and Gen Zs now, because it kind of spruced me up some. Anyhow, let's continue with the show. Check out all our programs at kpft.org, where you can find programming from music to politics to medicine to the eclectic. KPFT is listener-supported public community radio station. So please remember, if you like what you hear, go to kpft.org and support the station. This is a mouthpiece of progressives in the entire Southeast Texas, people. So we need your support, right, Mademoiselle? Isn't that right?
Yeah, yes, of course. How do you think we can support programs like Politics Done Right without your help?
She said Politics Done Right. Did you hear that, folks? She said Politics Done Right. Anyhow, folks, so please remember that if you like what you hear, visit kpft.org and ensure we remain a strong, viable community radio station that provides news, programming, and information not influenced by whom?
The corporatocracy.
Yeah, you got that word.
I remember that.
You remember that word. Okay, folks. So please, folks, call in. We want to talk to you. We want to hear your points of view. Remember, 713-526-5738. But beforehand, do you know what time it is?
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Now, I have a confession to make. I just wrote this stuff kind of like Speedy Gonzalez because, as it turns out, I wasn't ready. There's a whole lot of stuff happening today, but I knew kind of what I want to talk about. So if I don't have my P's and Q's all together, you guys know why. Anyway, the title was Want a Better America? Implement the Will of the People, Not the Mythical Center. And it goes like this, folks. The solution to America's problem is simple. Stop searching for the mythical center. Stop forcing conformance to man-created obsolescent documents and implement the will of the people as we change the laws to reflect reality. You know, one of the things that I hate the most, Daniel, is when somebody tells me the Constitution says that, and don't we have a Supreme Court that actually says the Constitution may say certain things, but we have to interpret it?
Of course, yeah. The funny thing is how selective people are about it. We saw at a Randy Weber town hall this past weekend that he addressed a question from a mother who lost a child to gun violence. And she brought up the fact that 97% of the American people support background checks. And he went into a long diatribe about how the Second Amendment is an inalienable right for people to have arms and be able to defend themselves. But what he never got into is how a background check doesn't prevent you from prevent your average person from getting a gun. It just means that there are some people that, have had their rights curtailed. And these same people are the tough on crime people that want to curtail people's rights for all kinds of things and throw them inside of a cage. But they think that there's this open absolutist policy that somebody's able to have a gun. In addition to that, by Weber's logic, he apparently thinks that you can carry a sidearm that shoots out, biological and nuclear weapons, right? Because
Yes.
It's absolutist, so it can't be infringed. But we all know that they believe in interpretive constitutional law just like we do.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it any better myself. Anyhow, this morning, I blogged a Common Dreams article that is trying to fool Americans into changing their will for Medicare for all by using lies and misleading information based on a Washington Post article. To my amazement, the pushback from the author, other journalists, and left was swift. They called out the group as a stooge for the health industrial complex. But what got me with that, I read both the Common Dreams article and the article proper from the author. What gets me is how the form that journalism takes, that form of taking both sides. They said this, they said that, without the certainty that really should be. If you have a particular amount of profit in healthcare, I'm sorry, that is money not going towards taking care of people. That's a fact.
It is a fact, and it also it's pretty clear, right, that in the healthcare debate's a great example of this, that the least they could do is point out that people are going to lose the coverage, right? And so you don't have to give a platform to people who say it's not going to happen because people are going to lose the coverage. Going back to that Weber town hall, he says, if you replace the law tomorrow, everybody's going to get to keep their insurance. Makes no sense at all. It's completely impossible. You get washed out of the market. It's the words of someone who's never had to deal with the horrible, I say, violent aspects of the U.S. healthcare system.
And, violent is the word. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing the difference. I come from Panama, a Central American country that everybody, that we call the third world country. And even in that place, you have what's known as Medicare for all.
Universal healthcare has a great track record around the world.
Absolutely so. Anyhow, folks, listen to this, folks. To my amazement, the pushback from the author, other journalists, and the left was swift. They called out the group as a stooge of the health industrial complex. Republicans passed a huge tax cut scam that most Americans did not want. They sold it as a tax cut for all. While it is partially true that most Americans who work may have seen a few dollars, it was all taken away with the loss of deductions and the increase in health care and much more. I see you going to the mic.
Nodding along with you, my friend. Keep reading.
Yeah. No. Let me tell you. It's interesting with the tax cut scam because I gave a little talk a few months ago about the ability to set prices. The person who controls prices, the person who controls capital, can say, okay, you want me to increase your wages? I got your wages increasing, but you still don't have pricing power. And because you don't have pricing power, I can still take it back away from you. And even though I paid it to you, I can take it back.
Right. And flat regulation always hurts the people who have the least resources.
Right.
You see it in the tobacco companies. The biggest tobacco companies in the world are always in favor of making sure that the regulations across the industry are broad, right? That they don't hurt the big dogs any more than anyone that's a smaller player in the market, because they know that they have the army of lawyers and accountants that can turn around and help them wiggle their way out of it and build those relationships with Congress, and they can send their lobbyists forward to go and do their bidding, which is why everybody actually has to be on the same playing field. And we can't have that even competition, but somebody has $1 billion in their back pocket and somebody else has nothing.
Citizens United, McCutcheon, I can name law. I mean, what do you call it? Supreme Court these what do you call those Supreme
Supreme Court decisions,
Decisions.
runaway decisions.
One after the
Jane
other.
Meyer wrote Dark Money, talks all about all of the cats that were let out of the bag by Citizens United.
Yes. Anyhow, continuing. The current administration is cutting regulations as fast as they can read them. Interestingly, as they do this, destructive petrochemical fires like we had a few weeks ago, like we're having today in Crosby, heavy metals from failing coal-fired power plants, lead-infested and polluted drinking water permeates not just Houston, not just Flint, not just West Virginia, but throughout the entire country. I was watching a CNN story, and I was surprised that it was on CNN, but they were talking about, we are concentrating a whole lot about the water problems in Flint. The defects within our infrastructure is national. The lead infestation and other infiltration of heavy metals is national.
Absolutely. You've said it before, too. What works in Appalachia works in Third Ward, works in Flint, works on the West Coast. It doesn't matter where you are. You're facing the same issues, which is the right to live.
And what's interesting, Daniel? And that is why my phrase is always, when we unite Appalachia, the ghettos, and the barrios. And I know, folks, that is stereotypical, but that stereotypical phrase says it all. We unite everybody, and then we can beat the plutocracy. Whoops, I missed my position here. Here we go. I think most ethical politicians want to implement the will of the people. I really do. Whenever a politician starts, they usually start benevolently. They really want to do things right. I know you may not think so, but I
Depends on the politician, my friend.
Yes, I know, but I like to start out giving people the benefit.
Y'all,
of that.
Egberto's such a nice guy.
I have to be. The problem is that it is hard. It takes a lot of work. Worse, an overbearing plutocracy puts obstacles in the way of politicians many times to what they say or they pay to have, or rather, do what they say or they pay to have another candidate defeat you by creating a framework to beat them. 2018 makes it clear that we can have a better America. 4 candidates decided to run without the help of the plutocracy. Most importantly, they stayed engaged with their constituents even as they are tackled or they are tackling national issues. They are able to speak to these issues in a form where it is clear that first and foremost it is the will of the people that will dictate their votes. Ilhan Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, and Rashida Tlaib are the models of politicians we must support. It is not too late for even current politicians to adopt this model. Politicians must let Americans know they intend to implement the will of the people, and they will find they can spend much less time soliciting money and more time to figure out how best to serve their constituents. Folks, the telephone number is 713-526-5738. All lines are open. 713-526-5738. Comment on that part, the ending part, Ilmar, and how to work without financing from the plutocracy.
I'm glad I decided to stay for the hour. I mean, we could spend the whole hour on that if you want.
Well, before we spend the whole time on that, I want to tackle a particular issue here. There's a story that I saw on Channel 11, and you were on that story along with Candace Weber, and I said, you know what, we got to get Daniel and Candace in. I couldn't reach Candace, but I thankfully could reach you. Tell me a little bit about that story. Let Harris County understand exactly what's going on here. This is a very, very important story, and this is a story where we are going to find out if the will of the people will be the will of the people.
Well, it all starts with Judge William Bill McLeod, who was popularly elected in Civil County Court at Law Number 4 in November of 2018. He won by 10 percentage points exactly, which is, I believe it was either 120,000 or 140,000 votes. Right. It's a very clear mandate. He's one of the top vote getters in all of Harris County. He's certainly one of the top vote getters of all the judges who ran in Harris County. Right. And he had the support of the people all the way through, which he worked very hard to get. Not all politicians at any level necessarily have what you might call fans to begin with, but Bill doesn't just have fans. Lots of people are fans of Bill, but he actually has friends as well who are willing to go to bat for him, which is rather incredible. recently, he was looking at other ways to make a big difference. And one way that you can make a big difference is if you move up in the courts, because the higher precedent that's set by the courts, the bigger the difference. Well, in the state of Texas right now, you have 9 Supreme Court justices, and every single one of them is very conservative. And the Supreme Court Chief Justice position is occupied by someone who's been a judge for a very, very, very long time, but has done some rather odd things. For example, going out and defending Harriet Miers and then leaking during one of those interviews that he had a relationship with Harriet Miers. And so Bill was looking at challenging him.
Right.
And so Bill told people he was looking at it, and that has been interpreted by some to have been an automatic resignation according to a very arcane part of the Texas Constitution. And so now the County Commissioner's Court determines whether or not he gets to keep his seat. There is a provision, though, that would allow him to stay on as a holdover and to run in a special election in 2020. And my position on it, and Candace's position, and the position of a lot of people, is that, look, Bill was popularly elected. It's what the will of the people was. It's what they wanted. In the last just mere few months, he has taken 3 times the amount of jury trials that his predecessor took in all of 2018. So he's moving cases through the court. There were 1,400 cases on the docket that didn't even have a court date set that he has cleared out at this point. And he's continuing to really do a good job of serving. So after this happened, he said, you know what, I'm not looking at any other benches. If this is what's going on right now, what's best is that I keep doing what I'm doing and serve the people in my current position. And I'm not going to look toward any other court. I'm going to refocus in on that. And we want the County Commissioner's Court to make sure to keep him on as a holdover and allow him to keep doing the good work that he's doing, that the people of Harris County sent him to the bench to do. And I think the Harris County Commissioner's Court is going to do the right thing.
I think the Harris County Commissioner court has to do the right thing, because I mean, I think this fits very well, and I'm coming to you, Tori and Johnny. I think this fits very well with the subject that I spoke about today, the will of the people. I think what you're telling me is that that this is a judge who didn't realize about this, realized there was an existence of such a clause within the Constitution. And once he realized there was a clause within the Constitution, you went ahead and said, well, hell, I want to, I didn't get this position to resign this position in a year or in a few months. I got this position to serve my position and serve these people and move this on a path to success.
Yeah, I agree. You know, Candace did a really good job of explaining this and gave a really good analogy, which is that she's a nurse.
Right.
And there are certain things that she knows a lot about as a nurse, but there are other areas of medical care that she knows less about.
Right.
And there are arcane things. Maybe they're outdated, maybe they're up to date, but they're obscure, but she doesn't really have to deal with them.
Right.
And she's a wonderful nurse, but there's just different realms of expertise. And what Bill's really good at doing is moving along the kinds of cases that enter his court. And he's upheld the Texas state constitution. You know, an interesting aspect of this case, because it's his job to uphold Texas state constitution and the U.S. Constitution. There are 2 really important notes when it comes to that. Constitutionally, the Harris County Commissioner's Court can leave him on as a holdover.
Right.
So there's no violation of the Constitution on his part, and they wouldn't have to violate it in order to keep him there. And that's all we're asking him to do, is to take a perfectly valid and legal option that respects the will of the people to keep him on the bench. The second thing is that all of those people who are waiting for a trial, they were being denied their state constitutional rights to a speedy trial, and he has cleared it out.
He made sure it happened. But secondly, I think there's another issue here, and that is if they were to remove Bill from the bench, it would mean that an appointed person would hold on to that position until 2020, a special election in 2020, which then is saying that the will of the people would have been denied.
Yeah, that someone nobody voted for would wind up on the bench. That would be a shame.
That would be a shame. So, I mean, I think it is incumbent on commissioners, of course, to realize that anytime, if any commissioner has an intent to appoint somebody, if any commissioner was to have an intent to appoint, I think it would require one to take a deep look as to why that commissioner, given that they have a legal out from the Constitution, why would they want to appoint somebody and then, in as much as there's going to be an election in 2 more years? So I mean, I think it's incumbent on, and you know what I really think, because I'll be honest, I'm coming to you, Tori and Johnny, but we want to kind of finish this part, get through most of this part, and then we'll come back to Bill again later. My phone's been ringing off the shebang the entire time. Once this bill thing came up, and people were like, what the, what's going on with McLeod, because we all know Bill McLeod started this ground game thing to really get folks really voting. He played an instrumental role in turning Harris County blue, and with turning Harris County blue, a majority on the commissioner's court. Isn't that true?
Yeah, absolutely. He works as hard as anyone on general community work. I mean, to tell you a little about Bill McLeod, if you've never known him before, big heart, sharp mind, always a ton of energy, talking to everyone in the room. I had the pleasure of actually sitting down with him during the campaign and helping him put pen to paper about some of the things that he's gone through in life to explain to people where he's coming from and tell his story a little bit. And Bill is really, he talked about how when he was in grade school, he got picked on sometimes for different things. He had to overcome some educational gaps he had to overcome. Right. He dated someone for a very long time who he lost to cancer.
Away, yeah.
And it's they say, if you want to talk about the testament of somebody's character, it's not whether or not they make mistakes or not whether or not they encounter, setbacks, but it's how they pick themselves up and how they respond to that. And so I think in all of these different cases, he's the kind of person that responds really well, picks himself up, and makes sure to go out and work for other people. He's devout. He goes to church every single Sunday. He cares about community at every single turn, and he's just a heck of a person.
Now, for people who want to kind of figure out who this guy is, I mean, remember, we are seeing not only in Harris County but throughout the darn country what a good politician looks like, what a good judge looks like. How can they reach him?
McLeod for Justice is his website, I believe, and you can find him on Facebook too. But really, if you reach out to Bill through any of his social media channels or anything like that,
you're going to hear from him.
You're going to hear from him, and you're going to have a real conversation. If you want to talk to Bill, you can, because he will talk to you, and he is all about building community and helping you get where you're going and being a good, solid member of the Harris County community.
So let me be clear here. There's absolutely no reason for a commissioner's court to appoint an unelected person to William Bill McLeod's seat, because there are constitutional remedies for him having not known to tell someone or to suggest that he is interested in a Supreme Court position, which would have been good for Harris County.
Well, right, and that's a big debate too, and we'll see where the legal ruling lands. But no matter where the legal ruling lands, of all the interpretations that are there, it seems that there's a constitutional option for them to respect and honor the will of the people.
The will of the people. What it is again?
The will of the people.
The will of the people. Okay, let's go to Tori. Tori, come on in.
Hey, Egberto. What a beautiful day it is.
Yes,
and,
it is.
To hear you on the radio is just wonderful.
Thank you,
Best
my
show
brother.
on KPFT.
Thank you, my brother.
Something you said earlier reminded me of something that happened a few decades ago. I'm a history guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so you remember the beginning of this vast right-wing conspiracy, quote unquote?
Yes, I do.
The first days of the Clinton administration, it was Hillary Clinton's first day in office as well, and she came up with this idea of health care for everybody, nationalized health care. Mm-hmm. And it just came raining down on her ever since then, and it hadn't stopped, really. The people opposed to, all kind of socialistic things. And anyway, it started off with her, and, I was a huge fan of Hillary Clinton back in the day. Right. I lost confidence in her when she started doing all kind of other Wall Street kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But from the very beginning, national health care, it seemed like it could be a great bipartisan issue. Clinton, Hillary Clinton, was fresh off the board of Walmart. And, Walmart doesn't want to pay for employees' insurance.
Exactly.
And the employees can't afford it. And it just seemed like the right thing to do. Get the taxpayers to pay for it. And, Walmart's happy. The workers are happy. What could go wrong? Anyway.
No, let me first of all, Turi, you're absolutely right. And that is what your testimony. And first of all, folks, I'm surprised that we have this many lines open. 713-526-5738. 713-526-5738. By now, all of those things are lit up. Anyhow, folks, let me tell you, Tori, you're absolutely right. We need your testimony, right? Here's the thing. We need people, when I talk about will of the people, one of the reasons why politicians get away with doing what they're doing, one of the reasons why the plutocracy gets away with what it's doing is because the people are silent. They're not executing their will. They're not telling folks about what their true wants are. If we use Facebook and we use all these other tools to communicate among each other, right? We have to learn how to use them to tell our stories. Something is wrong, tell your story. That is the most effective way to prevent folks from hurting you. You want to add to that, Daniel?
I think you're dead on, right? Is that, what a classic kind of organizing principle is to tell your story because people relate to it. A story is, is worth 1,000 statistics a lot of times. And it's what began to turn the conversation on healthcare itself, actually, is when people began to tell the different stories of the things that were happening. And some of them were positive stories because they were able to get coverage with new healthcare legislation passing. And some of them, unfortunately, were a little bit less happy stories about people who couldn't afford the system. There was a guy right here in Houston, if you'll remember, who couldn't afford his insulin, and he raised $700 of the $750 he needed on a GoFundMe, and he fell $50 short. And unfortunately, he passed away. And when he did, all of his friends came out and said, I would have given him the $50. But somebody shouldn't have to be couponing and begging and GoFundMeing their insulin. That's a ridiculous way for us to go about our health care.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear the sad story about some 65-year-old fat guy that screwed his health up and needs insulin. But what that doesn't pull to a lot of heartstrings. But you talk about the little kids that have epilepsy, and that's how we got marijuana oil legalized in half the states.
Right.
Because, kids don't want to see, people don't want to see little kids have epileptic fits, And just this morning earlier in The Guardian, some woman talking about, she's not going to be able to afford the care for her child. It's like if Trump gets rid of this Affordable Care Act.
But you know what?
And the ACA, let's just face it, it was built to break. Obama wanted socialized medicine also. He knew he couldn't get it. He's just taking a little bite, just get his foot in the door, and he comes up with this highly compromised system, the ACA. The idea is not to go backwards on it. The idea is to go forwards on it, to Medicare for all.
Tori.
And I'm pretty sure that's what Obama had in mind.
Tori, well, we don't have to think about what he had in mind. We just have to listen to his old videos as far as wanting Medicare for all. And, I'm in such agreement with you when you said that it was designed to break. It was designed to break into Medicare for all. It became slower when we missed the opportunity to put the public option in. And the reason why we had Democrats, blue dog Democrats, who went ahead and sabotaged the option, the public option, is because they knew the public option would have been, which has no profits in it, right? No profits, no executive pay, no any of these pay in there. The regular private insurance could not compete with a public option. So they knew that would have created the demise of the healthcare insurance industry faster than necessary. Even without that option, though, the fact that they left in there that everybody had to be covered, whether you had a pre-existing condition or not, that destroyed all the models, all the models that insurance companies put together. It destroyed them, because what happens is if you get your modeling wrong, which most people by design will get their modeling wrong, would force insurance companies to cave. And once they caved, that leads to the government policy. It seems like you want to say something.
Well, I think you're right, and we were talking about this a little while ago, right? Pre-existing conditions. It's a very interesting conversation right now because let's say you're in the middle of the desert and you've run out of water, and somebody walks up with a canteen and you say, "Can I have a sip?" and they say no. It's not that different than if somebody walks up with a canteen and you say, "Can I have a sip?" and they say, "Sure, but it'll be $200 million," because you don't have the money in your pocket.
Right.
So whether you're covered or not, right, also comes down to what the price is, and we have to continually find ways to keep that price a little bit lower. ACA is obviously flawed, but it did A, allow for expansion of coverage, and B, in some cases, make that price tag a little bit more affordable. If we just throw it out
save
tomorrow,
thousands of people's lives.
right? If we just throw it out tomorrow, people will lose coverage of pre-existing conditions functionally, no matter what any of these congressional representatives want to say about it. They absolutely will lose their coverage when it comes to pre-existing conditions.
Absolutely. So 713-526-5738 is the number. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. And thank you so kindly for calling in, my friend Tori. You take care, okay, buddy?
And here's Johnny.
All right. You know that. Here's Johnny. Hey, Johnny. People know you, buddy.
I want to recommend yesterday's edition of Letters in Politics on KPFT. I think it airs at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's a 1-hour program.
Yes.
And I was in and out of the house, but I heard most of it. And what I heard, I really liked. I was impressed with the interviewer as well as the interviewee. I felt it was pretty thorough treatment of Medicare for all or health care in this country. So I think the listeners would do well to go and listen to that interview from
I listened to it this morning.
Letters in Politics.
I listened to it this morning, and yes, that is true. You know, as we get more people talking about this, Johnny, as we get more stories out, Johnny, I am finding people a lot more receptive. You would not imagine, but here's the kicker. That article that I blogged this morning, I want people to read it at egbertowillies.com from Common Dreams, because the issue is there is, the same thing that we are accusing the Russians of doing to in the Trump, to help Trump win, right?
Well, you might be accusing the Russians. I could care less what the Russians do.
I care less about it either, because Trump and anybody could hire a local company to do exactly what Russians did. Okay, so
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that is not something that a lot of people are concerned about. That I am more. If you see what I'm writing, if you see what I'm talking about, Trump is not the central issue at all, because I've been saying for years, Trump is just a symptom of a disease in the country. And I was happy, actually, for Trump, because the manifestation allowed it to come right out. Johnny, you have anything else to add, brother?
Yeah, he's a pus pocket I would love to burst with a pin.
Yeah, I'm with Johnny. I'm not happy for Trump, Egberto.
When I say I'm happy for Trump, I mean, at some time you have to have a catharsis. At some time you have to break the scab.
You don't think that's catharsis for old Johnny?
Yes, Johnny. But let me finish this phrase. Let me finish what I'm trying to say here.
Okay.
When we don't have a strong break, right? A lot of times people just hump along. I was on a panel yesterday, right? And I was on a panel with one of the women, Secunda from Black Lives Matter. And there was a question about the left, right? And they were asked her, "Are you a part of the left?" And, when they asked me, I was like, of course I'm a part of the left, and I'm all in. I mean, I go to Daily Kos and all these kind of stuff in all these spaces. And her point of view was that, well, she so many times don't feel included that she wonders about the left. And I understood what she's saying. We took two different approaches to how we talk about it. What Donald Trump did is he broke it open so widely that people could see what Secunda was talking about, because so much remains hidden that, you listen to somebody like me who, just kind of, I don't have too many hang-ups. So you listen to me and it's like, okay, fine. But when you talk to others who, who can personalize certain issues, it makes a whole lot of sense, Johnny.
Well, I hope, Roberto, the next time you have an opportunity
yes, sir,
to talk to the Black Lives Matter volunteers or activists,
yes,
you make sure they understand, I hope they do by now, that there's at least two major divisions on the left, and especially within the Democratic Party.
Okay,
Party
please
proper.
Tell me what they are, because
you got the Democratic corporate machine Hillary faction, and then you got people like you and me.
Right.
People like you and me who are vociferous against right-wingers, who also equally criticize the Nancy Pelosi's and the Hillary Clintons for being too corporatist, and we also criticize them especially Hillary, for being very disrespectful towards the Black Lives Matter activists.
Johnny, I know
like
you.
the Bernie camp.
Johnny, see, here's the deal. I know you, right? And you are the left-wing activist that she loves. But I also go to places like Netroots Nation, and I go to democracy conventions and all of that. And there are a lot of our left-wingers that are not corporatists, but also they are not like you. You want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, the conversation, if I could turn it around as well, I think it's really important for people to listen to everybody, and that I think it's important for people to listen to the Black Lives Matter Houston activists and other Black Lives Matter activists around the United States to hear the things that they're saying, because they're telling you exactly how you can get turnout in communities that traditionally have been left out when it comes to the political process. So I think that's really important too. It's extremely complex. Coalition building is always extremely complex. I'm always in favor of making sure to tie hands and try to build the biggest coalition that you possibly can. But I would just say that conversation needs to be a rounder table too before we start, especially before we say, we need to go and tell BLM activists how they should be listening and who they should be listening to. I think we need to lend them an ear and hear kind of what they're saying, because it's more complicated, I think, than Sanders Clinton.
Yeah, it is more complicated than Sanders Clinton. Hey, Johnny, anything else that you want to add before I go to Sally? And by the way, folks, we have open line 713-526-5738. Again, that is 713-526-5738.
I would urge people to make a donation if they can to both, well, actually 3 different places besides KPFT, which is vital. Stacey Abrams is a fair fight. HCFAT, HCFAT.org. That's the part of the PNHP, the Physicians for National Health Care.
Love those guys.
And then finally to Black Lives Matter.
There you go. Hey, my brother, thank you for
I love Black Lives Matter. I wish there were even more antagonistic towards Republicans, especially them.
Hey,
y'all have a good day.
You have a good one, Johnny.
You too, Johnny.
All right, let's go to Sally. And folks, we have open line 713-526-5738. Again, that is 713-526-5738. But before Sally, let me just say, Lupita, how are you doing back there behind Engineering Central?
I'm doing good. I got a hang of it.
You got the hang of it?
Yeah.
You are doing great. So thank you very much.
No, you're welcome. I'm glad to be learning.
Okay, now I go to, as soon as I plug my headpiece back in, come on in, Sally.
Hey, Egberto, how are you today?
I am doing great, and I'm listening to the one and only Sally. How you doing, my friend?
I'm hanging in there, but because we were talking about health care, I really felt the need to call in and give my little testimony.
Please do.
Because... And I still feel this way about the Affordable Care Act, that it really should have been called the Mandatory Insurance Act.
Okay, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, because that's basically what it was doing. Now, Obama, I can't fault him. He tried. He tried his best for us. But I was under the impression that when the ACA went into effect, that my company would all of a sudden provide me with health care.
Right.
And that was a big joke because these big companies had all these loopholes.
Right.
That
is how it got passed.
So that right there put a big bad taste in my mouth. But because I am a working poor person who happens to live in California, that expanded Medicaid actually saved my life.
You know what is interesting? That is, first of all, I'm glad that it saved your life, because your testimony both on Politics Done Right on KPFT and Politics Done Right daily, I loved the input that you put in all of the time. So let me tell you something. The Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act was really the magic of Obamacare. Okay? Because what it did is it gave coverage to people who were in abject poverty or who just couldn't get health care.
A working poor person.
Working poor person. So that was the wonder of it. I mean, it was good for the person who had pre-existing conditions, etc., etc., etc. Daniel is humping to get in. Come on in, Daniel.
I got to tell you something. I got to tell you this. Sally and anybody else listening, the Texas legislature is in session right now. It's part of one of its 140-day open sessions that they have every 2 years. And when an amendment came up that gave them the opportunity to add Medicaid expansion to the budget, the House Republicans voted unanimously to shoot it down. And in the House, on the House floor, they show a 1 for yes and a 2 for no. And they were all holding up 3 fingers and saying, you know what 3 means? It means heck no. And they were all laughing about it. So the people who are not getting covered right now, not only were they against it, but they were joyous about the fact that those people are not getting coverage. And I think that's a tragedy.
That is sad. But Sally, let me ask Daniel something, because I didn't, were you on the floor when that happened? I know you were in Austin a couple of times. Do you know if we have videos of the behavior?
I don't think that there's videos of that behavior, but if you talk to reps, it happened. I mean, it's confirmed several times over. But and you can see it in their voting records over and over and over again. These guys, they're not even willing to go take a walk and let the thing pass. They have to be there to gloat and smile and shoot it down. They are not willing to have this conversation. The money has already come out of the taxpayers' pockets, but the services aren't coming back to the state. Thanks,
Sally. I don't know. You're in California. Let me tell you about Texas. In Texas, we are already paying for the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act. We're just prohibiting our people to get it, and all it would cost here in Texas is 10%. That's it. 10% of the total.
They don't care about us people. They really don't. These politicians get to a point where our lives are in their hands, and what really matters is who's donating to them, what corporations are keeping these politicians funded.
You're absolutely right about that. And there's a real gutlessness to it too, right? Because Medicaid expansion is good policy, and I think behind all of it, there's people who just don't care at all, and then there are other folks who say, oh, I don't want to get primaried, and so they don't do the brave thing, if you want to even call it that. It's really just good policy altogether, and really people deserve a shot, and that's why it was in the Affordable Care Act to begin with.
But you know what is so sad, Daniel? I want to piggyback on that, because for you to actually come out and display some sort of a joy in not passing some sort of a healthcare bill, that is a pathology. Okay, that is a pathology there. But here's the thing, folks. I think we are partially responsible in not addressing this correctly. Let me tell you in Texas what we have. We have a Republican Party that is murdering a sect of its citizens. And we don't express it that way when we talk about it. The truth of the matter is, murder is the voluntary taking of somebody's life. And when you deny somebody coverage who you have the monies to give coverage to, that is murder when they die. And we have to now talk about charging individual state representatives and state senators with murder for killing over 2,000 Texans every year for the lack of coverage that they're giving them. Stan, I will be with you shortly. Don't you agree, Sally?
Oh, yes, definitely. And right before I tuned into your show, I happened to come across this article of now Trump is putting health care off until after the 2020 election.
Yes, of course he is. What he did was interesting, right? Trump said, people don't understand Trump, right? And this is why I don't cover what he says. I don't cover what he says because he wants you to cover what he says to keep your eyes off of the ball, okay? That is what he wants to do. Keep your eye off the ball. When he talked about healthcare, the reason he talked about that, he wanted to have the next subject to cover the Mueller report, because when the Mueller report leaks start to come, he wants to have other subjects to dilute the message. There's a whole lot of things that are going on here that it behooves the press to really understand. I don't cover Trump because what he says doesn't really matter. What is occurring behind?
And you are so true there, my friend.
Right. What? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Sally. Go ahead.
Yeah. What he says doesn't matter because it's not policy. How can a tweet be policy?
Right. It doesn't matter. And what we have to get, we have such an insipid media that every time he tweets, they listen to a tweet It doesn't matter. Look,
Yeah.
we should be reporting on what's occurring behind the scenes. There is I don't recall the name of the industrialist that says, we love Trump because Trump has all the attention on him. By having the attention on him, they don't see what we are doing.
They're robbing us blind behind the scenes.
We are deconstructing America at this point in time. I have to run to some other calls, my friend. Thank you so kindly for calling, okay?
Oh, yes. You have a wonderful day.
You too, my friend. Let's go to Stephanie. Stephanie, come on in.
Hi. There's a news story that's not getting much coverage.
Yes.
Okay. 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was an enormous snowstorm that hit the upper Midwest.
Uh-huh.
That did get a lot of coverage.
Right.
Basically, there was a lot of very wet snow. It covered the ground.
Uh-huh.
Within a few days, the snow melted a lot faster than usual, flooded the area out. A lot of Nebraska, Iowa, and the other states are underwater.
We're really underwater, yeah.
That's still that's getting coverage, although most of the conditions are still there. What has not been reported is the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota is heavily underwater, and food and medicine's not getting in.
Pine Ridge Reservation. Okay, I'm glad that you told me.
Pine Ridge is where the AIM uprising took place in the mid 70s.
Right.
Mostly they're Oglala Sioux, but there's more than one tribe living on the area.
Excellent.
Now, the federal government does have the resources to go in there and do it. The Army has cargo helicopters that can go over the floodwaters. They have the supplies. FEMA has the supplies, but the Army especially has all the stuff they can use to get in there. The Trump regime is hostile toward Native Americans, as so is most of the state governments, particularly North and South Dakota. And they would love for the Native Americans up there to die off,
just
so
disappear.
They could grab the Native American reservations, and Big Ag would like to get the land, and the oil companies would like to get
Repeat
the land.
the name again?
It's the Pine Ridge Reservation. Now, there was an article I read last night in Daily Kos, and it tells about that. Something like 8,000 people are stranded.
Excellent.
There was also a website in there where people can send donations that go directly to the tribe.
I am definitely going to write a blog post about that, piggyback off of the Daily Kos article. I hadn't read the Daily Kos article with that this morning, so I'm so happy that you're giving us that information because we really needed to hear that. And that is what alternative media is for what these folks are not covering. And we're going to do our job, right, Daniel?
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you said that, and it's great to have that conversation. You look at a lot of TV stations covering things like car crashes or what pantsuit the next presidential candidate will wear, but 8,000 people stranded in South Dakota is really what you get.
Thank you so kindly for calling in with that.
We have the resources to take care of it, just like we had the resources to take care of Puerto Rico, even more so.
Yes.
There's all this enormous transportation capability that the Army and the Marines have to take care of situations for getting troops in and out. And that includes a lot of stuff besides guns and bullets. They have to transport troops in and out, so they have transport capability, they have construction capability, medical capability, feeding in the field capability, and all of that stuff. They have all-terrain vehicles once the ground gets open. For example, in Puerto Rico, the Marines could have gone in there regardless of whether or not the harbor was clogged up with silt or not. They could have flown in. They could have airdropped a lot of stuff. They have offshore ships with helicopters and all of that.
It's about who are the people. That's what it's always about, Stephanie. It's always about who are the people.
Well, all of that military capability, unless it's actively being used in a war zone, that's excellent training for the people.
Excellent. Thank you so kindly for calling, and you have a wonderful day, okay?
Same to you.
Bye-bye. All right, let's go to Stan. Come on in, Stan. Stan? Stan, you're on. You're on mute.
Hey, I got one thing, and I really don't understand is why people want to get rid of Obamacare. It's a form of just helping people. If we had everybody healthy, we'd all be more productive. And to turn around and say, no, we don't need you is unbelievable to me.
I can't disagree with you. We want to keep Obamacare as it is right now and morph it into Medicare for all. When we say Medicare for all, we mean a type of policy that takes well, my implementation of Medicare for all would get rid of the health insurance companies, because I think profit in health insurance, where there's no innovation, is really, there's no reason for that. So that's that there's no reason to have, I mean, you want profit in certain places where you want innovation, because, I mean, we understand that is how things function. People see a profit motive for something, they go ahead and they try to do something well. And when it's complete, they make some profit from it, not excessive. When excessive profits become a problem, we just have to tax that out of the system. I mean, I want people to go ahead and, before I come back to you, Stan, learn something about modern monetary theory, MMT. Look it up, modern monetary theory. America has all the resources necessary to fix all its streets. It has all the necessary features to take care of just about everything, if we decided to support people and not just corporations. And for those people who are going to say that is magic thinking, I want you to remember one word: quantitative easing for corporations. Go ahead, Stan.
Well, I guess the last thing is, I'm sure Obamacare looked good on paper, but it may not have been just as smooth when they put it in action, but we can always tweak it. You can always fine-tune it later on, just like you do a lot of other things. It's beyond me. I don't understand why we just can't help somebody else.
Well, Stan, let me tell you, you have friends, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, the same way you're talking to me, I know probably a lot of your friends may not share your ideology as far as what we need to do. Don't ever let that deter you from talking to people. You tell that testimony. You speak your word. Because believe it or not, even those you think are not listening to you, they are listening to your words. So please remember, don't ever stop talking, brother.
You bet.
You have a wonderful day. Have a good one. All right, we got about 2 minutes left. Let's go back here. Lupita, how is it going back in there? You're doing such a wonderful job, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. I was kind of stressed because I thought we were going to get a whole bunch of phone calls and I was going to have to do this and that, but we didn't get as much.
We didn't get as much. I'm shocked. And I think what happens also is the subject that we started to wasn't conducive to a dialogue. And I didn't give something that really told people, I got to call him either to hit him up or something else.
Got to start debating right now.
I think that's what it is. But, we love our callers. We love all the folks that are just listening right now as well. Daniel, let's kind of close out the show talking about Bill here once again. What can people do to ensure that the people's will is maintained?
Call the county judge, Lena Hidalgo's office. Call your own county commissioner in your own particular precinct. In fact, you can call all of the precinct county commissioners, but make sure to at least call the judge and call your own at the top, because you're a constituent of theirs. In fact, if you go to the Harris County Commissioners Court website, you can actually find the names and numbers of all of the different staffers that are there as well. The county is a little bit ahead of the legislature and the federal government when it comes to that kind of transparency, and you can have conversations with those folks. You also can sign up to speak April 9th at Harris County Commissioners Court. It starts at 10 a.m. on a weekday, but it's, that's something, of course, that we should always continually look at in government as ways to create better access.
About engagement. You have to engage.
You have to engage, but there are lots of people who are going to go and testify to keeping Bill as a holdover, and you can do the same if you have the extra time to get out there. If you don't, have a good, solid, long conversation with a judge and with your precinct commissioner and other commissioners.
Well, look, Daniel, thank you very much for having been here. Daniel is the president of Indivisible Houston. Daniel is one of the hardest working activists I know in this county, in this state, in this city. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And guess what, folks? I am out.
Where freedom rings and singers sing. Where Robert Earl Keen meets Martin Luther.
Thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. You can personally reach me by sending an email to egberto@politicsdoneright.com. Remember, Egberto is spelled EGBERTO. Change starts with you. 90.1 KPFT gives you information not tainted by corporate interest. Please visit kpft.org and contribute. Let's ensure continued access to real information and news remain available to all. Again, thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right.